going to do is we're going to look at this document and we're going to try to make it make sense so that, for one thing, we can explain it to other people. Because a lot of the time, July 4th comes around. We're a couple months away from July 4th right now, right? We're a little over 3 months away, or 4 months away. What is today? Is it March or April? It's March, right?
March 30th.
The end of March.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're a few months away still from July 4th. But on July 4th, you could tell people what the point of the holiday is, right? It's not just about fireworks. It's not just about barbecuing, right? Those are the things that people usually do on July 4th. Why are we celebrating this day? Why is this day so important? So that's going to be the main thing. Why is it so important? But we're going to study a little bit about how to look at what are called original source documents, or original documents. Okay, and you know why this is so important? Does anyone know why this is so important? Why is it so important?
Because it shows the original thing and what they did.
Yeah. Does anybody know the difference between, have you guys ever talked about primary and secondary sources? Is that something that you maybe talked about in speech class? Mm-hmm. Yeah, can you explain the difference between a primary and a secondary document?
A secondary source could be edited
Mm-hmm.
to make something different.
Yeah, so a secondary source is talking about the primary source, okay? So, does anyone keep a journal? Like that they write in all the time? Do you keep a journal? Okay, so that is a primary source for your life. So 100 years from now, when you're, maybe gone, maybe not, we don't know. But if you're not around anymore, then we could use that. And this is what I always tell my wife. I say, when they make the movie about my life, they're going to need all the primary sources. So that journal is going to be really important because that's a primary source. It's directly from you. Now, if somebody read your journal and then, we probably don't want that, right? We don't want people reading our journals. But if somebody read your journal and then they wrote a book about it, would that be a primary source? No, that would not be a primary source because it's not coming from you originally. So is the Declaration of Independence, is that a primary source? Yes, that is a primary source. That is the original thing. And it's really important to read the original thing because then you won't get confused and you won't get led astray or misled when people talk about something because you'll have read the original thing. So that's why it's important. Whenever you hear somebody talking about something, think, what is the original thing? What does the original document say? And usually when you read that, you're going to know way more than anybody else who's talking about it. So that's one of the reasons why, or the main reason why we want to go back to the original document. So you have that in your hand. We're going to look at a couple of things in this document. And the main question that, I'll get to that in a second. The main question that you're going to be able to answer is why we separated from England, right? Because you probably learned in history class, right? We used to be part of England, and then we broke off. We separated. You're going to know the reasons why, all right? And that's going to be really, really important because you're going to be the smartest one in any history class that you're at. So, now, who studies the Bible? You guys study the Bible? All right, guess what? I'm going to give you a little tip that you're going to be able to use for the rest of your life. The rest of your life. And even your parents, too. They're also going to be able to use this, okay? If you know how to study the Bible, then you know how to study everything. If you know how to study the Bible, you know how to study everything. Because studying the Bible, when you learn those skills of how to understand what something means and you read those stories, then you can actually apply that. You can use that anywhere else, especially when you're studying history. That's probably the best place to apply it, all right? So it's really important to pay close attention whenever you're doing Bible study or Bible class or when you're in youth group because those skills you're going to be able to use for the rest of your life. Okay? Now, we're going to go ahead and look at a couple of things. So here's the original one. I'm going to turn this off for 1 second just so we can see it better. Who read for me? You read for me, right? You said, in Congress, July 4th, 1776, a declaration by the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, which means that there's a bunch of people and they're together. Yes, sir?
That was a lot more than it says on the paper.
Yeah, it's a bit more than it says on the paper. I cut some things out because I could just barely fit everything onto one page and I didn't want to have multiple pages, so I just barely fit out. So I cut a few things out in the beginning, but that's it. Just the beginning. And here's the very famous painting, or probably the most famous painting, of all of what we call the representatives meeting together in Philadelphia in the hot, humid, muggy summer of 1776 to decide whether or not they were going to sign this document. And it was a really, really big deal because if they signed it, they were committing what's called treason. All right? Does anyone know what treason is? What's treason?
Like going against something?
It's going against an authority. And actually it means the authority of your nation. So usually that's punishable by death. So it was a really, really big deal. They were basically putting their lives on the line by signing this document. We're going to see that in the end. But all right, so we're going to go through a couple of these specific parts of the document. All right, some of you guys who are a little younger, it might be a little hard to follow along. All right, you guys who are a little bit older, right, you're junior high and going into high school age, I'm going to rely on you a little bit. Okay, so try to pay really close attention. All right, I know it's going to be kind of, but that's okay. All right, I'm going to explain. All right. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. We're going to stop for 1 second already. Does anyone know what unanimous means? Anybody? What does unanimous mean?
All of them have to vote?
All of them have to vote. And if it's not unanimous, it doesn't go through. All right? So it's like if you're deciding, say you go outside and you're going to, I don't know, you're deciding what game you're going to play, and you can only play the game that everyone decides. Everyone has to agree that you're going to play this game. That probably never happens, does it? Usually probably go majority rule. That's probably what ends up happening most of the time. Because it's very hard to get a unanimous decision. So this decision is unanimous. Everybody agrees to it. All right, so we'll pick up there. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. Man, there were some really, really big words there, aren't there? A lot of big words. But I'm gonna throw this out there and see if anybody can do this. Can anyone summarize basically what that meant? What were they saying? What was the? Does anyone know the author? I should have asked that at the beginning. Thomas Jefferson. He's the one who is writing this. What are they? What is he saying there? You want to take a shot at it?
They're leaving England.
That is, yes, basically they're leaving England. What they're saying is, when you leave a country, when you make a big decision like this, that you're going to completely separate from another country, you should give the reasons. You should say why, right? Which makes sense, because like if you were in, I don't know, let's say a soccer league. Does anybody play sports?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you just didn't show up one day and then you never showed up again, would that be okay?
Nope.
No. Would you need to give a reason, like I broke both of my legs at the same time? That would probably be a good. Would that be a good reason not to play soccer? You know, or maybe you like play music and you say I went deaf in both ears. That would be a reason not to play. You should give the reason. So what Thomas Jefferson is saying is, if we're gonna leave the country, we need to give the reasons why. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Oh, good. All right. I saw like one head nod. Good. Okay, we're going to go on. So, I know it's really long. We're not going to read the whole thing. Just a couple of key parts. We're going to go to the second paragraph. Try really hard to follow along with the second paragraph. Are you ready? All right, here we go. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they're endowed by their Creator with certain and unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All right, we'll stop right there for a second. What do you think self-evident means? Any guesses? What is if something is self-evident, what do you think that might mean?
It means it proves itself.
It proves itself, exactly, right? So what he's saying, what Thomas Jefferson and all these representatives are saying is, these truths, these things that we're going to talk about, these are obvious. We shouldn't have to make an argument about them. They're self-evident, all right? So they should just be plain to look at right off the bat. We shouldn't have to really justify them very much. And what are these self-evident things? Well, the one thing you see there is that men or people are endowed with rights. All right, where do the rights come from? You got to look back at the document. Where do the rights come from? Where do they come from?
God.
How do you know? How do you know?
Because it says creator on there.
Bingo. Excellent. Yeah, because it says creator. They're endowed with these rights from their Creator. All right, so this is also really important because this is the document that basically started our country. And the first thing that's happening in it is it's saying that our rights, the things that what are the rights here? Life, liberty, and what's the other one? What's the other one?
The pursuit of happiness.
The pursuit of happiness. Sorry, Taylor. The pursuit of happiness, right? Where those things come from God, and if they come from God, then they cannot be taken away. That's the idea. If they come from God, they can't be taken away. Now, if they come from, if all those rights come from Naya, could Naya take them away if she gave them? Yeah, she could take them away, right? But they don't. They come from somebody even higher than Naya, right? They come from God, so they can't be taken away. So that's a really, really important thing about our document, our Declaration of Independence. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit more here. That to secure these rights, this is right after the word happiness, if you're still following closely, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. All right, we're going to stop there again for a second. What is that? What do you think that means? Consent of the governed. Who are the governed? Who are the people who are governed? Oh, you're the governed? Okay. Anybody else? Is anybody else here part of the governed? Anybody over here? Are you part of the governed over here? Okay. I'm part of the governed. Oh, all of us are part of the governed. Those are the people who are under the government, right? But it says that the governed only allow this by their consent. All right? That means that whatever the government is basically exists. It's there because we let it be there. Do you think that's true? Do you buy that? You don't buy it? Taylor doesn't buy that. Why don't you buy that? Not sure? Yeah? Okay, let me give you an example. Let's say that, what town are we in right now? Who knows? What town are we in? You can shout it out.
Wappingers.
Wappingers. Let's say there was a local ordinance, which means a law passed in Wappingers. Everybody has to paint their face green. They have to cut off all their hair. And they're only allowed to wear cardigan sweaters. All right? Do you think that people would do that?
No.
Yeah. Would that require the consent of the people? Like, would they have to agree to that for that to happen?
Yeah.
Would a few people do it? Maybe.
Yeah.
But the consent, in order to do even something crazy like that, you would need the consent of the people would basically have to allow it. That's what that means. All right, let's go on a little bit. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. All right? Now, that's a lot. I'm just going to kind of explain what that means. Okay? When things get really, really bad, okay? So let's say that the Wappingers made us paint our faces green and do all this crazy stuff, okay? Then it is the responsibility of who we are. Who are we? We are the governed. It's the responsibility of the governed, basically, to put an end to that and to restore those three things that were the rights. What were those three things? They were life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay? So that's basically what they're saying. Now, I'm going to skip down a little bit because we're basically, the Declaration talks about some of these things a little bit more. But go scan through the document. Scan through the document until you come to a 1. You find the 1?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So go to that sentence right before the 1. I'm sorry, 2 sentences before the 1. All right. So it's at the end of the 4th paragraph. It says, "The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states." And those are the 13 colonies that we originally had. "To prove this, let the facts be submitted to a candid world." All right, what that means is the king, right? The king of England, is he in the 13 colonies or?
No.
No, right? He's over in England, right? He's like, how far is that? Is that just a quick boat ride? No, it actually would take about a month. It would take about a month to get from the 13 colonies back to England. So it's a long way away. All right, now it takes you about 7 hours. but back then it took about a month to get there. So what he's saying is, the king has not been respecting those three things. What are they? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He hasn't been respecting those things. And to prove this, we're gonna prove it. We're gonna show you how. We're gonna tell we're not just gonna tell the King of England how he's been nasty. We're gonna tell the entire world. We're gonna let everybody know. Okay? This is a question for anybody. Okay? Why did we separate from England? Off the top of your head, like immediately, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? I'm actually hoping an adult raises their hand. No adult wants to? Nobody wants to? Okay, all right. Why did we separate from England?
We separated from England because they were abusing their powers.
Yeah, I guess I already said that. Now think specifically. Something specific. That's okay. Now we're getting warmer. What were you gonna say?
They didn't.
They didn't let us have religious and political freedom.
Yes. Okay, you're going quite a bit deep. All right, you're set. All right, we don't have. Yes, in the back there.
Don't they usually say taxation without representation?
Taxation without representation. Has anybody ever heard that before? Taxation without representation. Oh, great. Okay, so most of you have heard of that. Now, I'm gonna try to blow your mind really quick here. So, really quick, look at the Declaration and see if you can find how many reasons are there. How many reasons are given for separation? It's really easy. All you have to do is flip the paper.
27.
27. There are 27 specific reasons that are given that we separated from England. All right. Taxation without representation is number 17. It's number 17. All right. You don't need to look at that one yet. You can stay on number 1. But the reason why I say that is because most of the time, like if it was July 4th and we went outside and we walked around and we said, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell me why we fought a revolution with a revolution against England and won our independence?" They usually would say taxation without representation. And that's true. That was one of the reasons. But it's actually number 17 on the list. There's a whole bunch of other reasons first, and we're going to look at a couple of those. Okay? So first we'll look at number 1. Number 1 says, he has, and he is, who is he? Who is he?
King.
He is the king. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. All right. Now, what this means basically is that the king and England and all the people who live in the 13 colonies, they don't see themselves as Americans. They wouldn't have been calling themselves Americans. They would see themselves as English, and they would live under English law. But they're seeing two kinds of law. They're seeing law for the people in England and law for the people in the 13 colonies. They're not really happy about that. So that's basically the first one. Okay? So can somebody read 17 for me? A volunteer? Can you read it? 17 for us?
For imposing taxes on us without our consent.
Okay, so that's the no taxation without representation. So you're taking our money, but you don't let us make any decisions about how much money to take, and you're just throwing all these taxes on us, you know. And if you wonder if people like taxes, just ask your parents if they like taxes one day, or ask me. Maybe not now, but as soon as we're done, and I'll probably talk to you for an hour. All right, let's look at number 24. This is probably not my favorite one because it's not a good thing, but this is the one that I always want to show people whenever we talk about the reasons why we separated from Great Britain. I'm just going to pick it. Taylor, can you read that one for us? Number 24. You can read it from your paper or up here.
He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people.
Oh, that doesn't sound good, does it? So that's a much bigger deal than taxes, isn't it? All right, it's one thing if you come in and try to take my money, right? It's another thing if you send in the army and you burn my house down and kill all my chickens. Okay, that's a much bigger deal, isn't it? Okay, so that's a pretty big deal. That's pretty good reason to separate, isn't it? Okay, so
Yeah.
remember that one. Okay, and then finally, this is number 27. So this is the last one. All right, number 27 out of 27. I'll read this one. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. All right. So if you remember like colonial history, all right, I'm sure all of you have had some colonial history, right? Before, who lives outside of the 13 colonies, and even some within them?
Indian?
Right, Indians. The Indians lived there. They were here before we got here, and they were here during the time of the 13 colonies. Did the settlement and the colonies, did that always go well with the Indians? Not always. Sometimes it did. Sometimes there were groups of people who got along well with the Indians, like the Pilgrims. They typically got along pretty well. The local people who lived here, so Wappinger is an Indian word, they got along pretty well. The people who settled this area. But other areas, they didn't get along so well. Because for one thing, some of the Indian tribes were, they had a completely different, what we'd say, code of ethics. That's what this means right here. Their rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages. That means they don't fight soldiers; they come in and fight everybody. So if they're coming to your house, you have to run because they're gonna kill everybody. They're gonna destroy everything, which is very different than the way that the British and the Americans would have fought, because they're only fighting soldiers. But this is different. This is a lot. So this is pretty scary, because they're saying the king, the British, they're trying to get the Indians to attack us. That's, in some ways, that's probably scarier than the British, right? Especially if you live way, way, way out of town. Okay, all right. So we're gonna jump. We'll get to that in a second. We're gonna jump down to the last paragraph. Okay, the last paragraph. So they gave the reasons, right? They gave 27 different reasons of why we need to separate from England, and now they're kind of going to tie everything together. All right. And another thing that they say in this document is, We've tried really hard to smooth things over. We've sent people to talk to the king. We sent Benjamin Franklin over. We've done all this stuff. We've sent these documents, and we've gotten nowhere. There's nothing else we can do. This is the end. That's it. We're done. All right. So that's kind of where they're at. So let's look at the last paragraph. That's right here, and then you're going to see a whole bunch of names here. All right. We'll get to the names in 1 second. We therefore, you can follow along with me, we therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions. Who is the Supreme Judge of the world? The Supreme Judge of the world. Who is that?
God.
That's God. So again, they're invoking God. They're saying, because we can't go to our king, we're going to the king. All right? We can't sort this out with our own ruler, so we're going to go to somebody who's even higher. We're going to go to the highest authority, all right, and we're going to let him judge us. Does that make sense? That's really, 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 kind of gives you chills. You're like, whoa, that's a big deal, right? Okay, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states. One second. And that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. There it is again. What do you think that means? Divine providence. Who is that invoking again? Who's it invoking to? It's God again. Divine providence. Providence means that God works things out. That God is the one who's in control. So again, they're invoking God. We mutually pledge, and this is the big deal right here. Last sentence. The last sentence of the whole thing. This is probably this may be the most epic line in the whole Declaration of Independence. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Which means, what they're saying, all these names here that are written on this document, this is at the end of the Declaration, they're saying, we are now willing to die for this. We are willing to lose all of our fortunes, we're willing to lose all of our money, our houses, all that. We're willing to give our lives, and we're also willing to sacrifice our honor, which back then was a really, really big deal. So that's basically the Declaration of Independence, and there's a bunch of names on there, some that you probably have heard, like Thomas Jefferson. The big one here is John Hancock. What other names? Shout out some names if you know anybody who knows. Benjamin Franklin. You guys heard of Benjamin Franklin, right? John Adams. All right, so a bunch of these really, really important, what we would call forefathers. Yes, sir.
I see the really big signature.
That's John. You want to know something funny? For a long time, whenever you sign something, like if you were at the bank, people would say, "Put down your John Hancock. Put down your John Hancock," because of John Hancock. I don't know.
Told me that.
He walked. Oh, okay. So you already know. I guess he walked in. He was like, "I'm gonna have the biggest signature of all." I don't know if that was happening. Maybe there was some deal that he got to have the biggest one. I don't know.